First, this is true of religion, which man needs in order to reconcile the dichotomy between his wants and their satisfaction, between his moral demands and his practice, between his ideal notion of the world and reality. If such conciliation is accomplished, however, religion no longer remains upon the heights that its highest moments have achieved, but steps down to the battle arena and identifies with one side of the dualism of existence which it had previously unified. On the one hand, religion confronts what we experience as our whole life as an equivalent power. It is a totality that exists above all the relativity of human nature. On the other hand, religion is part of life as one of its elements, and the whole of life depends on its interplay with all other elements. Thus, religion is both a whole organism and at the same time a single organ. It is a part of existence and at the same time existence itself on a higher internalized level. The same form is disclosed by the behavior of the state. It is certainly in the nature of the state to stand above parties and their conflicting interests. The power of the state owes its unimpeachability and its position as the highest authority in society to this abstract level. Though the state is imbued with all these qualities, it nonetheless participates in the struggle of specific social forces, supports the party of one group against that of the other, which, in a narrower sense, confronts the state as another force, although in a wider sense it is a part of it. It is this dual position of the highest authorities that repeats itself in metaphysics wherever, for instance, the totality of existence is interpreted as a spiritual essence and the absolute, which creates and manifests itself in all phenomena, as a spiritual substance. Yet this absolute must, at the same time, be recognized as something relative. For in reality the spirit is confronted not only with a corporality, such that in this opposition it first realizes its own essence, but also with spiritual phenomena of an inferior kind such as wickedness, indolence and hostility. Such a metaphysics will not consider these qualities to be part of the spirit which is the absolute substance of being. Instead, the spirit is juxtaposed to all worldly and imperfect existence as a party, a balancing factor, a specific value, even though spirit as an absolute incorporates everything. This dual existence is most radically effective in the concept of the self. The self who conceives the world confronts all the specific contents of the world on an equally high level, independent of all qualities, differences and conflicts that exist within the individual, as it were, as his own private affair. But our actual sense of life does not permit the individual to remain at this high level, but identifies with certain contents more than with others, just as religion has God interfere at some points, whereas he should be equally effective at all other points. The self becomes identical with a particular content of itself, it differentiates itself, positively or negatively, aligns itself at a high or low level against the rest of the world and its distinctive features, whereas the meaning of the self had placed it above all these. This then is the kind of form that money, in relation to its sphere of domination, shares with these other forces that are so different in terms of their content. The essence of money also lies in the abstract height to which it raises itself above all individual interests and styles of life. It gains its significance in and through the movements, conflicts and the balancing of all these, as an impartial entity which does not reveal the slightest clue for or against serving a particular interest. And then, supplied with all the unique qualities of being able to transcend distances, of concentrating power and of penetrating everywhere, qualities that are the result of its distance from all that is specific and one-sided, money enters the service of specific wants or forms of life. And here, despite all the general similarities that money as a form shares with religion, the state and metaphysical thought, a remarkable difference emerges. All these forces, where they identify themselves with particular interest and standpoints, become distinctly partisan with regard to one side of the conflict and opposed to the adversary. They align or identify themselves with one of the specific differences to which they were previously indifferent, and in so doing exclude the other differences. Money, however, offers its services equally to almost every purpose within its sphere of influence. It does not exist in an antagonistic relationship to other things as do the other forces as soon as they transform their general meaning into a particular one. Money actually preserves the comprehensive quality of its general meaning by the uniformity with which it serves protagonists when they use their general relation to money in order to work out their differences and to fight out their conflicts. In practice, the objectivity of money is not something that lies above oppositions so as to be subsequently used illegitimately by one side against the other, but is rather, from the very outset, of service to both sides of the conflict. In so doing, however, money does not belong to the broad category that includes air, which is breathed equally by the most diverse living organism, or weapons, which are used equally by all parties to a conflict. Yet money is the most all-embracing instance of the fact that even the most radical differences and antagonisms in the human world always leave room for similarities and community of interests. But money is more than this. The other types of nonpartisan entities simply remain aloof from the inner purposes that they serve. Money, however, no matter how alien it is as an abstract entity to all subjectivity and qualities, and as the economic abstract of the full extent of the universe of values, frequently displays the mysterious capacity for serving the distinctive essence and orientation of two antagonistic parties. The one extracts from the general reservoir of values that money represents those forces, means of expression, possibilities of communication or independence that are appropriate for its specific nature, while the opposite party receives monetary support that is no less flexible and pliable and no less helpful to its inner nature. The importance of money for the style of life lies in the fact that, precisely because of its complete detachment from all one-sided entities, it may be used by any one of them as its own instrument. Money is the symbol in the empirical world of the inconceivable unity of being, out of which the world, in all its breadth, diversity, energy and reality, flows. The indiscernible structure of things has to be subjectively interpreted by metaphysics in such a manner that the contents of the world form a merely spiritual context, that they exist in a mere ideality and that only then, of course not in a temporal process, does existence emerge above them. It has been expressed in this manner, that the what gains its thatness. No one is able to say what this being actually is, which qualitatively determines the difference between the real object and the merely logically valid objective content. And this being, however empty and abstract its pure notion may be, appears as the warm stream of life, flowing into the schemata of concepts of things, allowing them to blossom and unfold their very essence, no matter how diverse or antagonistic their content and attitude may be. And yet this is nothing extraneous or strange to them, but rather it is their own essence which accepts being and develops it into an effective reality. Of all external practical things for which any analogy to the absolute is only partially valid, money comes closest to this power of being. In its very essence it too is quite external to things and completely indifferent to their differences, so that each entity can fully absorb it and develop its specific nature to its fullest extent. I have particularly emphasized the significance of money for the development of the rhythmical and the specific objective styles of life, because the incomparable depth of their opposition illustrates very clearly this kind of activity on the part of money. The pace of life, its alterations and those of the money supply. Finally, there is a third influence by which money contributes to determining the form and order of the contents of life. It deals with the pace of their development, which is different for various historical epochs, for different areas of the world at any one time and for individuals of the same group. Our inner world extends, as it were, over two dimensions, the size of which determines the pace of life. The greater the differences between the contents of our imagination at any one time, even with an equal number of conceptions, the more intensive are the experiences of life, and the greater is the span of life through which we have passed. What we experience as the pace of life is the product of the sum total and the depth of its changes. The significance of money in determining the pace of life in a given period is first of all illustrated by the fact that a change in monetary circumstances brings about a change in the pace of life. It has been asserted that an increase in the quantity of money, whether through the import of metals or the debasement of currency, through a positive balance of trade or through the issue of paper money, would leave the internal situation of a country completely unchanged. For aside from the few people whose income is fixed and not multipliable, every commodity or piece of work would increase in money value if the supply of money increased, but since everyone is a producer as well as a consumer, then the individual would earn only that much more as he had to spend.